Bushwhacked packs a lot of stuff into 1 hour. So much stuff, in fact, that it isn't too hard to see this roller coaster ride of thrills and chills as a bit contrived and fanciful. Everything in this episode seems to exist to keep us grounded in the moment and ignoring the overall meaning. The plot feels rushed along so that we can get to the next shocking moment, and this seems like a good plan considering that there are details that we shouldn't dwell on too much. More on that later. Nevertheless, Bushwhacked is surprisingly effective. It's scary as hell, and it's funny as hell sometimes. The action part of the plot may not be very interesting, but the episode does so many different things at the same time and succeeds with such a variety of things, from Simon's Fear of Space to the magnificent Tower of Dead Bodies, that your hour of TV viewing is not wasted in the least. Get yourself some popcorn. Firefly music soundtracks are not necessarily going to win any awards. Just as in a lot of other action-adventure, the music is just a random series of melodramatic notes. But I like how the music here, and in many other instances, is positioned for a specific purpose. We won't see too much scary stuff for a while, but this episode wants to keep us on our toes.
Anybody home?
Inhaling her, but if whoever's there is as healthy as the guy we just ran
I figured that fellow we run into did everyone on board. Killed them all. Then he decided to take a swim, see how fast his blood would boil out his ears.
You're a very up person.
Shouldn't we report this?
To who? Alliance? Right. They're gonna run right out here, lickety-split, make sure these taxpayers are okay.
Then we'll have to.
If there's folks on board in need of help, why ain't they beaming no distress call?
It's true. There's no beacon.
Which means it's likely no one's looking to find her.
All the more reason for us to do the right thing.
How's about you just say a prayer when we slide on by?
Shall I remind you of the story of the Good Samaritan?
I'd rather you didn't. But we'll check it out. Could be survivors. And if not, well then, no one's gonna mind if we...
By the way,
take a
why is
look
Jane
around,
pretending to
see
show
if there's
concern
no
for any
values
derelict survivors?
Yeah, no,
Who is he trying to impress? Book, I would guess. Jane gets a bit on friendly terms with Book in other episodes, and Jane may see some value in their relationship. Of course, I'm probably off my rocker, and Jane, as he has done before, is probably just stupidly trying to show concern where everybody knows he has none.
Whatever happened here happened quick.
Everything was left on.
In the first few scenes, this is the episode that is most like bad science fiction with its big mystery and its philosophical and ethics discussions,
They're just
Gone.
and of course the discovery of a derelict spacecraft containing a crazed lone survivor. There are a lot of Star Trek episodes in that particular category.
Sir.
Bushwhacked, though, soon jumps out of its molds and gives us some effective dramatic payoffs.
Someone was in the middle of an entry.
What are you suggesting?
This is a great scene. It spells out a lot of the important parts of the relationship between Book and Malcolm.
I don't accept that. Whatever horror he witnessed, whatever acts of barbarism, it was done by men. Nothing more.
Reavers ain't men.
Of course they are. Too long removed from civilization, perhaps. But men. And I believe there's a power greater than men. A power that heals.
Reavers might take issue with that philosophy. If they had a philosophy. And they weren't too busy gnawing on your insides. Jane's right. Reavers ain't men. They forgot how to be. And they're just nothing. They got out to the edge of the galaxy, to that place of nothing, and that's what they became.
Why are we still sitting here?
Malcolm has this
was Reavers,
eminently
shouldn't we be
practical
gone?
mind,
Work ain't done.
and it's a bit heartwarming to see him apply it to the spiritual life. Book, I suspect, is not trying to bring religion as much as civilization to these people. Religion is a part of civilization, I suppose, but this scene does a superb job of portraying Book's attempt to make sure that everyone, especially the captain, takes the high road.
I'd like to go with him. Maybe see what I can do about putting those folks to rest.
These folks already resting pretty good, Shepard. Reaver saw to that.
How we treat our dead is part of what makes us different than those did the slaughtering.
It is interesting that there is no establishment shot of this Reaver collage. We never get to see all of it at once, and it is as if the episode's makers did not want to exploit this object that otherwise has no trouble making its impact on us. Firefly does this kind of scene very well. As in a few scenes in war stories, we get the gist without wasting too much time on the gory visual part. Just about all Firefly special effects work well this way. It is as if the makers of Firefly have learned their lesson from the pre-Phantom Menace Star Wars movies and other great space operas that don't really need to show everything. This whole sequence, with the music, the worrying, the people who all don't want to be where they are, I think this is the heart of this episode, and I think that this sequence without dialogue is what separates Firefly from other science fiction horror stuff. Now here's a line by Malcolm I want you to recognize. It's a good example of the way that Firefly does things. Most action-adventure stories are much more efficient than Firefly. They don't include too many lines of dialogue that are not critical to the plot.
Get that stuff stored.
Like it's gonna matter!
This line by Malcolm is not critical. It's a throwaway line. He later changes his mind because the Alliance is coming, but the line is realistic. It shows how Mal can be wrong sometimes. It shows his thinking process, and it makes the drama feel more authentic. The line is a small touch, I know, but it's those small touches that make great drama work.
Looks like civilization finally caught up with us. Reavers. That is what I said.
You can't imagine how many times men in my position hear that excuse. Reavers did it.
It's the truth.
You saw them, did you?
Wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if I had.
No, of course not.
I'll tell you who did. That poor bastard you took off my ship. He looked right into the face of it, was made to stare.
It.
The darkness.
The Alliance commander is a better supporting character than average because he's a talking head with his own individual set of prejudices.
Very poetic.
He is falsely accusing Malcolm of murder, as is the cliché, but this is about his own deep prejudices and inexperience more than it is about a botched investigation or a contrived set of coincidences. Actually, there are a few big strange coincidences in Bushwhacked, but I digress.
Kind of will. The only way to deal with it, I suspect, is to become it. He's following the only course left to him. First he'll try to make himself look like
In any case, it is quite pleasing to see a kind of police chief character act like a human for once.
He'll start acting like one.
Let's have 2 MPs up here to escort Sergeant Reynolds to the brig.
This scene is one of the most peculiar of the series. It works as action-adventure horror, and there always seems to be multiple plots working at the same time to give us a wonderful thriller atmosphere with some poignance. This seems to be a good description of the whole episode as well. Bushwhacked and War Stories both do a hell of a job keeping you on the edge of your seat with a few extra moments thrown in. Television convention is a running gag with Firefly. It is usually used to set up a big punchline or a surprise, such as with the dispensing of the tattooed, tough-talking villain at the end of the train job. Bushwhacked is the episode that sticks most closely to a conventional horror sci-fi plot, but we can see where the show's writers are still constantly trying to flaunt and dodge our expectations. I also have a few reservations about the plot of Bushwhacked.
It's a Real burden being right so often.
What is that?
Booby trap. Reavers sometimes leave them for the rescue ships. Triggered it when we latched on.
And when we detach?
It blows.
For instance, why do the Reavers rig the booby trap to blow when the ship pulls away? Surely those grappling things can be rigged to explode when the ship pulls up instead.
Looks like they've jerry-rigged it with a pressure catch. It's the only thing to work with all these spare parts.
Well, since the Reavers must have their own ship, with its own set of weapons and technology, this explanation doesn't really hold much water.
Sure. Yeah. I think so. Besides, if I mess up, it's not like you'll be able to yell at me.
I also think that Simon and River's hiding place, while pretty cool, is a bit of a fantasy. So as not to leave you with a bad taste in your mouth, I will make this statement. Bushwhacked is probably my least favorite Firefly episode. The characters are not as robust as in other episodes, they seem too lightly sketched, the adventure feels a bit abridged, and there are some unexplained details that nag. But this episode is in good company. I'm comparing it to other American science fiction shows like Star Trek, Farscape, Buffy, and this episode fares well. If anything, Bushwhacked keeps you wondering what will happen next, and what more could you ask of TV?